Hello everyone, this is Steven from the Even Steven channel. Today we gather to mourn the loss of the 357 SIG cartridge. A cartridge that is more or less dead. So this of course is my SIG P250, which I still like to this day. It's an outdated gun with an outdated cartridge, although I have 357 SIG and I also have a 9mm slide that I can pop right on, so I could shoot either one just fine. Now, I'm here today to talk about the 357, I gotta slow down for that one, 357 SIG cartridge, which I have always kind of liked. Got a little bottleneck there. The bottleneck actually helps reliability. You have the case and it kind of necks down a little bit. That usually makes for a very reliable cartridge, although 9mm was never unreliable. 9mm also has a little bit of a taper. Very, very slight narrowing 9mm. But 357 SIG is uber reliable because of that narrowing there, the tapering there. So what's the story with this cartridge that I like and no one else seems to want to buy? Well, I'm going to give the briefest of history lessons. Around 1986, wow, we had the Miami shootout, and the FBI felt the need to have a more powerful pistol cartridge, and they looked at 10mm, and 10mm was a little bit more powerful than maybe they needed. So Smith & Wesson and Winchester teamed up to develop the .40 Smith & Wesson cartridge. This is of course dummy cartridge, but it's based on the 10mm. It's a little bit shorter, a little bit less powerful, and it's like 180 grains, sometimes 165 grains, but typically 180 grains, going around 1,000, maybe 1,200 feet per second, depending on the load. And that was like, the law enforcement caliber of choice for like 20 years. In fact, I remember a time where if you didn't have .40 Smith & Wesson, early 2000s, if you didn't have a .40 Smith & Wesson handgun, you were underpowered. You had a weak handgun. 9mm, that's puny. Who wants that? Now, I say these things looking back, and the difference between .40 Smith & Wesson and 9mm, I don't think it's a matter of which one's better. Those were just trends. Those were just fashion trends. And today it's come back around to 9mm, and .40 Smith & Wesson is on the way out. Certain law enforcement agencies will carry it because that's the guns they were issued and that's the ones they use. But .40 Smith & Wesson is on the way out, regardless of whether or not it was good. .40 Smith & Wesson being good is not important. The thing is, it's out of style. Now, 357 SIG is also a development of 10mm automatic. I don't have 10mm ammo here, sorry. But 357 SIG is also a development of 10mm automatic. They're both child cartridges. What SIG wanted to do was SIG wanted to make a cartridge that could take the performance of 357 Magnum and put it into a semi-automatic handgun. Now, if you look at 357 Magnum, do I have one on the table here? I have a 38 Special. Now, if you look at 38 Special, that's not gonna fit in here all that well. That's not gonna go. Yeah, it's not gonna work. It's got a big old rim on it, and it's a really long case, and that's just not going to fit in a semi-automatic handgun. So SIG wanted to replicate the performance of the 357 Magnum and put in a semi-automatic pistol. What's not to like? And to SIG's credit, SIG and I think Federal teamed up to make this. They basically did it. So typical loadings are 125 grains. This is truly, a 9mm cartridge. 0.355 inch bullet. You have 125 grains going around 1,400 feet per second, which is a lot. 9mm typically goes about 1,000 feet per second. Of course, loadings are different. You have different loadings and different this and that. But instead of having, 115, 124 grains going 1,000 feet per second, or 80 grains going 1,200 feet per second, whatever you want, you have 125 grains going 1400 feet per second. And in my experience, typically 357 SIG is going to have less perceived recoil than 40 Smith & Wesson. So it's a matter, do you want a lighter bullet going faster, or you want a heavier bullet going slower, or what balance do you want of those things? And I always liked 357 SIG. It's a cool looking cartridge. I think it's a little softer shooting than 40 Smith & Wesson. The idea of replicating 357 Magnum performance in a handgun is cool. I always liked it. Now, unfortunately, 40 Smith & Wesson, as I said, went out of style. Law enforcement agencies realized that 9mm, 9mm with good loads, hollow point bullets is just as good. You can fit more rounds in the magazine, so who cares? And the thing was, 357 SIG, which I just dropped, 357 SIG came after 40 Smith & Wesson. So it had to catch up. It had to prove itself to a level that 40 Smith & Wesson never had to. Because a lot of law enforcement agencies adopted 40 Smith & Wesson, then the SIG came around, hey, how about this? And they're like, well, we already got these. These are pretty good. And even if this was better, it wasn't better enough to justify switching to this. So when 40 Smith & Wesson went out of style, 357 SIG unfortunately got thrown out along with it. So where does that leave us today? And not in a good spot, because a box of 9mm will cost about $10, $15 a box, we'll just say. A box of 40 Smith & Wesson will cost about $20 a box, something like that. Maybe 18, whatever. 357 SIG unfortunately costs about $40 a box. People aren't buying it. Manufacturers aren't making it. It exists. You can get it, but it just not selling. It's not selling. It's unfortunate. So for me personally, I still have my SIG P250, but I can switch around cartridges all day long, This is the 357 SIG barrel, and that plops right in there. I keep dropping my cartridges. Plops right in there, no problem. Now, because 357 SIG and 40 Smith & Wesson basically have the same case head, you can interchange them with relative ease. So this is the 40 Smith & Wesson barrel that I have. I bought it. That plops in there pretty good too. And I could just take my 357 SIG barrel. I'm sorry, I could take my 40 Smith & Wesson barrel, replace my 357 SIG barrel, and put it all back together. This is the full size barrel, but it seems to work in the compact gun, so that's not anyone's fault. That just happened to be what I was able to acquire. So yeah, I can go switch over to 40 Smith & Wesson. There you go. I'm gonna get a 9mm slide, the full size 9mm slide, so that'll be cool. I'm gonna get that. So and because I have the 9mm slide, I can just pop that on whenever I want. Switch to 9mm. So one of the upshots of having 357 SIG, a handgun, is typically you can get a 40 Smith & Wesson conversion barrel. Though 40 Smith & Wesson is not in style anymore either, but if you still just love those 357 SIG guns, you can typically get 40 Smith & Wesson ammo for it, 40 Smith & Wesson barrel for it. Just pop that barrel right in. And I believe, falling in love, if you have a 357 SIG handgun, you can basically just drop in a different barrel and you're good to go. Sometimes you have to be careful. You might have to get a different recoil spring or this and that, but for all intents and purposes, if you have a 357 SIG handgun and there's a 40 Smith & Wesson barrel counterpart available for it, you can just pop that right in. And the magazines are the same. I can throw in 357 SIG, I can throw in 40 Smith & Wesson. In fact, I can throw a 9mm too. This all kind of fits in here. So 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 357 SIG. These guns are also marked 40 Smith & Wesson 357 SIG. They are identical. And unfortunately, this is probably going to be the last box of 357 SIG I ever buy. I bought this many years ago. This is like Ultramax remanufactured ammo. I don't know the bullet weight. I don't know the velocity. But someone knew I had a 357 SIG handgun, and they had a friend who bought 357 SIG ammo by mistake. Keep that in mind. Always be very careful so you don't accidentally buy 357 SIG ammo or like 9mm Makarov. Be careful. Make sure your 9mm is the right 9mm. Make sure your 357 is the right 357. And I'm probably going to shoot this up. And I'm probably never going to buy 357 SIG ever again unless I get a really good deal. Unless I find like someone did something stupid and they give it to me or I get to get it for next to nothing. I'm really never going to buy 357 SIG again. Because I could just buy 9mm at a third the cost and shoot paper. I'm just shooting paper. That's all I'm doing. Unless I'm shooting steel, that'd be cool. If I was shooting steel with the 357 SIG, that'd be really cool. But if I'm just shooting paper, it's going to be 9mm. So that's unfortunate. But because I have the SIG P250, and similar to the 320s that, you know, have their own issues, but similar to the 320s, if you have a 320 and 357 SIG, yeah, you pop a 9mm slide right on there. So you're good to go. And I guess that's it. A little history lesson, a little talking about me, talking about the cartridges. And I'm not sure how scientific it all was. But I wanted to give a shout out to the 357 SIG cartridge because it is unfortunate. I wish it could get a comeback like 10mm has done. It's weird that like 10mm and 40 Smith & Wesson are like cheaper than 357 SIG. I don't know. It's very unfortunate, but it's the way things are. So this is Steven from the Even Steven channel. Please don't like, share, and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will see you next time. Thank you, and goodbye.